Okay, some announcements this evening regarding in-person attendance. We are not going to exceed the 168 attendees that are allowed, socially distanced, 6 feet apart, and with masks required to be worn properly at all times. Regarding public comment, we will continue to take public comment from those in attendance and from those on the Zoom. I will do my best to balance those people that choose to comment in person and those that choose to comment on the Zoom. In the beginning of the meeting, we will take the public comment on agenda items only. Both public comment in the beginning and at the end of the meeting will allow for community members to speak for 3 minutes, and it will not be capped. But if public comment does go on for more than an hour, I will ask the board if they choose to revisit that cap at that time. And as always, I ask all to speak in a very cooperative spirit this evening and to remain respectful of each other at all times. I would also like to ask the board if they would be willing to move the first 3 presentations, A, B, and C, ahead of public comments, because that can be lengthy. And I know we do have some parents here and some students here. So I would like to ask the board if they would be agreeable to do that this evening. Everybody okay with that? Okay. So before we go ahead and do that, Ishika, do you have any announcements this evening?
Yes, there is one announcement. Congratulations to the girls' tennis team on their state championship.
Okay, so the first presentation then this evening is me. I will be introducing Allison McVeigh to the school board. She'll be joining us as the next student representative. She comes to us, her essay and interview illustrated a picture of a dedicated and ambitious student. So we welcome her, and we also know that she's been highly recommended by her teachers. So we look forward to seeing all the good things that you're going to do here. So if you would please join us up at the table. And Allison, welcome. Okay, and then thank you. And Dr. Kohler or Dr. Collier is going, Dr. Kohler is going to do the next 2 presentations this evening for our National Merit Commended students and our National Merit finalists, correct? Semi-finalists, yes, thank you. Not really, and we need that microphone on, so thank you.
I was off to a good start for a second. We'll keep the good news going. It's always good to get good news. I think we all are certainly welcoming it right about now. I'd like to thank the board for allowing me some time to recognize some outstanding seniors who scored very well on their PSAT and are now being recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Program. We are proud to announce that 19 of our seniors were named commended students by the National Merit Scholarship Program. In addition to those 19, we have 4 seniors named semifinalists. So at this time, I'd like to recognize all of our commended students first. Being named a commended student by the National Merit Scholarship Program is a testament to each student's academic progress and potential. Roughly 1.6 million students took the PSAT in the fall of October 19. These 19 students were among the 34,000 highest performers. So out of 1.6 million, they're in the top 34,000. Earlier, my office sent a congratulatory letter along with a certificate to each commended student. We do have some students and their families with us tonight, while others will recognize on the screen as I read their names. When you hear your name, please stand to be recognized. Here are our 19 commended students. Brendan Bagansky, Gregory Bolton, Abigail Calvert, Catherine Fazzini, Joshua Hellauer, Nathan Kalish, Ayad Call, Julia Coates, Casey Linton, Addie Madhew, Sam Ostrowski, Jessica Pan, Elizabeth Power, Alyssa Sharma, I believe Alyssa's here, Thank you for coming, Alyssa. Your family. Congratulations. Trent Swanson. Lily Underkoffler. Riley Wallace. Thomas Wyrant. And Owen Wright. Congratulations to those commended students. Now on to the semifinalists. Again, we had 1.6 million students take the PSAT in the fall of October 19. These 4 students were among the top 16,000 highest performers. They joined an elite group of academically driven students who make up less than 1% of all high school seniors. As we did with our commended students, my office sent them a congratulatory letter as well with a certificate when they were named semifinalists. When you hear your name, please stand to be recognized. And here are our 4 semifinalists. Gaurav Chawla, Anshika Gupta, Farnaz Khandekar, Jubjal Singh. I know Jubjal and his family are here. Congratulations, Jubjal. Good job, buddy. To continue in the competition and be considered for a monetary reward, these 4 semifinalists had to take the next step and fulfill several requirements to advance to the finalist level. The process included the submission of a detailed scholarship application, an endorsement from a high school official, a written essay, and earned SAT scores that confirm their earlier performance in the PSAT. They will be notified in early February if they have advanced to the finalist stage. Monetary scholarships will be notified, or winners will be notified in March. Again, congratulations to all of our students, their parents, and the teachers, as it's obvious that the collective group has attributed to the success of these students. Best wishes to all of them as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to do that, Dr. Kohler, because that is quite an accomplishment, and you're very right that we are in need of good news. So I thank you and all of the students for bringing us that good news, and best of luck to all of you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so then now that those 3 presentations have been completed, we will move into the public comment section of the agenda here. And we ask that for, again, to be on agenda items only. And we'll start with any comments to be made in person, if there are any at this time. Okay, do we have any comments on the Zoom to be made?
First up is Shannon Hetrick. Shannon, first and last name, full address, and your public comment on agenda items only, please.
Hi, my name is Shannon Hetrick, and I live at 128 Fox Run Drive in Collegeville. I'm speaking about agenda items 3D and 8A. I have 2 children in the district. They are 2nd, 3rd grade, and they attend Upper Providence Elementary School. My son will be in a virtual 2nd grade class with 28 students, with the possibility of higher numbers. The teacher can't even see them all on the screen with those kind of numbers. One of the issues One of the issues is that we have no idea what your limit is because you keep moving the goalposts and it's not written down. So not only is 28 too many for 7, 8-year-old kids in one class, even if it's virtual, but it brought up another concern for me and many other parents and teachers. We're curious as to what will happen when we do all go back eventually. How will that virtual class of 28 children be split up? Will they be sent to yet another teacher, or will they return to their original class? I'm really worried about how these numbers are being addressed or actually not being addressed. I'm worried about how people aren't listening to the experts in their fields and just going with opinions based on false information at that. It's concerning to me, and I thought that our community was above that. You need to really consider the sizes of these classes, not just during a pandemic, but especially during a pandemic. The number of students packed into a classroom varies from school to school, but there are schools that have much smaller classrooms with higher numbers of students going back in those rooms. This is public knowledge now, but it wasn't at the time when parents had to make a decision. The numbers in school do not allow for any social distancing. Parents saw the pictures that were in the presentations, knowing that those squares on the floor are about 1 foot squared seeing that there are only 2 squares between the desks, they realize just how close the kids will be sitting. I know that you said that there would be 3 feet from the middle of the desk to the middle of the other desk. Kids are not paper thin, which means that they're only 2 feet away from each other. I feel that this information wasn't clear to people before because they were so set on returning to normal. There's nothing normal about this return. If you plan on packing the virtual classes and the classrooms during a pandemic just to appease a few vocal community members, then I would take a long, hard look at your motives and the impact it's having on our student population and in turn, our community. If your motives include doing what's best for the kids, then packing that many kids in a class is counterproductive. I'm disappointed. I wish people knew more about the behind the scenes in the school so that they could have been more informed before making these decisions that should have been left up to those that have experience and knowledge in the field. So as both a parent and a teacher, I would love an answer to these questions. What will happen to those large virtual classes when they return? And what is your actual limit on class sizes for both in-person and virtual for K-6? Thank you.
Next up is John Y. John, first and last name, full address, and your public comment on agenda items only, please.
Thank you. John Yonchuk, 12 Edmonds Drive, Royersford, PA. To follow on the last caller's comment, I'd just like to state my severe disappointment with the news that came out today that the district would continue with their reopening plan, despite the knowledge that we are now marked insubstantial at Montgomery County. While you may have gotten new guidance from the county, what you have done is made all of the words and all of the plans that you've put into place up until now completely meaningless, and you've left the entire district unable to trust anything you say. To pull the rug out from parents at the last moment like this, after you've surveyed them about certain specific plans, is just unbelievable. You have allowed yourself to be bullied, which is further disappointing considering that many of you often talk about fighting bullying in schools. I am severely disappointed and I wish you would all do better. Thank you.
Next up is Lindsay Olanoski. Lindsay, first and last name, full address, and your public comment on agenda items only, please.
Lindsay Olanoski, 26 Pin Oak Drive, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. First of all, thank you to specifically the teachers at Oaks Elementary and the 6th grade, and shout out to Mr. Moyer for doing an amazing job. On top of that, in October, my family chose to send our children back to in-person schooling based on both the county metrics and frankly, the guidance provided by the Springford administration back on that September 28th board meeting and the reopening plan that was then subsequently made available online. This plan told me and my family that should the county move to a rating of substantial transmission, our district would immediately move to the fully virtual model. I fully understand and respect that this is a fluid situation and that recommendations have evolved since September. With that said, updated guidance should have been presented to parents prior to today. A change in planning this significant can drastically change a parent's choice for their family. As parents, we are making the best decision for our children's educational, emotional, and physical needs, and we do not make them lightly. But we make these decisions assuming that the district has kept us apprised of all updates and changes. And I just sincerely hope that moving forward, the administration and school board recognize the importance of transparency and timely communication, because there's a lot more that we have to navigate, and we need to be able to make the right decisions with all the information available to us. And that includes you all providing the information to us. Thank you.
Next up is Gabrielle Deerdorf. Gabrielle, first and last name, full address, and your public comment on agenda items only, please.
Hi, this is Gabrielle Deerdorf, 704 Collin Court in Royersford. I'm speaking on agenda item 3D, I believe, about the reopening plan. I'm just kind of curious, as somebody who is new to, since I have a first grader as my oldest, who's kind of new to how this works, if when Dr. Gooden presents his reopening plan, if he could explain how you can, in September have to bring a plan to a public school board meeting that needed to be voted upon and have public comment made addressing, and then just send out an email this afternoon saying, oh, guess what? No, we're not going to do any of that. As other speakers have said, that totally disregards all of the hard work that Dr. Gooden and his staff and the teachers and the families have done to prepare for this opening on Thursday. And then it just totally undermines the faith and trust that we have in the school district. So I'd appreciate if there would be some transparency and clarification on that. Thank you.
Next up is Lynn. Lynn, first and last name, full address, and your public comment on agenda items only, please. Lynn doesn't have a mic. No, wait, sorry. Go ahead, Lynn.
Hi. Samantha
Go ahead.
Hall, 20. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Samantha Hall, 25 South Wall Street, Spring City. When the survey went out, I asked if it was legally binding, and I was told it was, or that it could be, that you had consulted your counsel that it could be. So that, indicates to me that there was some degree of like, hey, this is what we're all agreeing on. Since you guys changed without telling anyone what the terms of the agreement are, then a new survey needs to go out, or parents should be allowed to change their answer because it's not what we agreed to. Thank you.
Next up is Brian Ewing. Brian, first and last name, full address, and your public comment on agenda items only, please. Brian, you need to unmute. There are no more comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. So now we will move into the action items. There are a few action items on the agenda this evening. 2A through E. Is there a motion to approve those, A through E?
So moved.
Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Dave, yes. Dave, were you in agreement?
I'm in agreement.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Fern, do you have all of that then? Okay. Okay, then we will go to Dr. Gooden to provide us with an update on the reopening of school.
Thank you, Mrs. Zalski. Now, I know that this week we are scheduled to start bringing our students back in, and beginning Thursday. And I'm happy to announce that we are ready for that. We're ready to bring our students back in. As far as some of the questions that were brought up a little earlier, as far as class sizes, I had sent that out to the board over the weekend to take a look at those class sizes. While we do have a couple outliers in some of the buildings, for the most part, we are within the ranges that we established when we set forth our plan, knowing that there are going to be some, there's going to be some outliers. One of those outlying groups is sixth grade. Sixth grade, we are looking at 6 virtual classes, and all of them are at 30 right now. And so we are trying to secure a substitute teacher that will teach another virtual class. So we are in the process of trying to find that. We have not been successful finding that as of this time. But as far as the large numbers that someone's referring to, for the most part, our in-person numbers, I'm not sure exactly what the average is. Mr. Rizzo, do you know what the average are right now?
Per building? Yeah, I can give you per building if you'd like. In-person average at Brook is 18. In-person average at Evans is 21.1. In-person average at Limerick is 17. At Oaks is 20. Royersford 17.9. Spring City 14. Upper Providence 19. And 5th and 6th grade 22.
Okay. All right, do we know our virtual classes?
Yep. Back to the top. Okay, Brook 25, this is virtual. Brook 25, Evans 16.2, Limerick 17. There are none at Spring City. Upper Providence 21. 5th and 6th grade 28. And I missed a few, didn't I? hold on, it flipped on me. Yep. So Oaks is 20, Royersford is 17.8.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rizzo. And so, as I mentioned, there are some outliers in those numbers. We do have a couple spots. For example, at Upper Providence in second grade, my virtual class is at 28 for the second grade group. Those are some outliers that we have. I'm just being transparent. And I've tried to be transparent all the time that we are doing our best to level those classes and keep them within the ranges that we set. But I cannot create a virtual class for 2 students. I just can't. I don't have the staffing to do that. We have done the best we can to provide as many parents an option of whether or not they want to send their children back into school or whether they want to keep them virtual that we've been able to do. So as you've heard the averages as Mr. Rizzo reported, and there are a couple outliers out there. If we can make adjustments to those outliers, we can, but staffing is an issue. And it certainly is a concern that we have. I had said that we had planned that we are ready to open on Thursday. I will let the community and the board know that we are, the other concern that we have is in the area of bus drivers. We may have to, it looks like we are short some bus drivers right now due to the fact that drivers have notified customers that they will not be coming back to drive. And so we're trying to fill those spots. So we may have to make some adjustments to routing before Thursday and get that information out. So we think that we can, we have a workaround for that, but it is an issue for us. And so we're currently trying to work that out. Someone had mentioned that about the county being insubstantial. We have moved into substantial. At some point last week, I believe it was around Thursday, the county really began to look at, okay, well, let's look at municipalities and what's happening in the at the municipal level rather than the county. And so, and that's really what we really begin to track those numbers in for our Limerick, Upper Providence, Royersford, and Spring City communities. At last look, we don't have current data for this week, but we were in moderate and at the local level. I don't know what will be this week. As I said, the county is insubstantial right now. There have been some folks that have that have contacted me and they're upset that a move to substantial doesn't automatically trigger staying in virtual. But in my discussions, my extensive discussions with other superintendents who are running in-person classes in their districts and with county officials, they're finding that spread is not happening in schools because of the mitigation practices that we put in place, wearing masks, having students it's socially distanced. And I'll come back to that one. The washing of hands, trying to be conscious of what we're doing. So the county is not finding, when they do contact tracing for positive cases in schools, they're finding it's not occurring in the school. Transmission or spread is not occurring in schools. It's happening outside of school, in the events that people go to, when they have family gatherings, when they go to other events. I see it every day when I'm driving to work. Kids standing around, people walking around without masks on. And that's what's going to happen. But county is not finding in county schools that are running that the spread is happening in schools. And they're concerned that we are closing schools needlessly. And that seems to be the position of the county at this time. And so I understand that we are insubstantial. I realize that. I would argue that substantial needs to be something more than just 1 week that we're suddenly insubstantial. That I'd prefer that we see substantial over a period of time, at least 2 weeks minimum. But I am concerned that a decision to not bring our students back based upon this metric is probably not going to be in the best interest of our students since we are ready. And for everything that I'm hearing, as I talk to my colleagues in other districts, they are just not seeing the problems in schools. They're seeing it outside of schools. And so, if the board is willing to move forward, we are certainly ready to open up on Thursday. I would argue that, and I would ask the board that once we are opened, that my office in connection or consultation with the county health department, that we would really look at a need to go virtual again. And that would be a decision that was made at that time in consultation with the county, and that it wouldn't be just a automatic move to virtual. I will also indicate that the PDE has indicated that they are changing their metrics as well, as far as low, moderate, and substantial. They're in the process, and I expect shortly for PD to come out with new metrics. So it is a moving target, and I know it's frustrating for folks in our community. It's frustrating for us who work here in the district. It's frustrating for our teachers. But I would not be sitting here moving and advocating that we move in a direction if I did not think that we could handle it. I do believe that we can. I believe we have mitigation protocols in place to make this successful. I have been in extensive conversations, as I said, with my other peers in their districts and with the county, and they're saying that schools are a safe place for students to be. Now, I understand that we're unsubstantial, and I know that there are folks out there who are upset that they think that I've been duplicitous or I've been misleading. And that's not been my intention at all, because I've found that every week something changes. Something new comes out, a new definition, a new strategy. It's like we're trying to hit a moving target. But I will let the board know that we are ready to open up Thursday if you're willing to move forward with this. We can do it. I believe we can do it. If I saw a problem in the schools, once we do open, I would come back to you folks immediately and say, this isn't working, we need to close and go back to virtual. But in talking to my peers, as I've said, and I'm going to repeat, it bears repeating, they're not seeing the issues in their buildings. They're just not seeing it. Yes, they have positive cases that come up, and that's going to happen. I fully expect us to have positive cases. Last week, we had no positive. We had 0 positives for the folks that are coming into the district, either our special ed students or faculty coming in. The week before, I believe we had 3 or 4. Maybe it was 4. But once again, as we go through our extensive contact tracing protocol, we're not finding that the problem is occurring in the schools. It's happening outside of the schools. So the board has we're ready. We're ready to move. We're ready to give this a shot. But I need the support of the board to do this. And with the understanding that there's people out there in the community who think that I've not been forthcoming. And I apologize for that. That's not been my intention. But because we have moved into substantial this week. So that's really my update. Any questions?
Dr. Gooden, I have a couple questions. So, I mean, there were some comments in the beginning of the meeting that there were some really good comments because I do have a couple concerns related to that. But, the first thing I do want to say is that there's this understanding out there, because I've heard it numerous times through comments, that this board was bullied by some group of parents. I don't believe anyone on this board, I could be wrong, was bullied into making any decisions by any one group of parents. I believe our decisions were made
a lot of it was supported by the surveys, that each time we send surveys out, sometimes not as clear as we'd like, but we still send surveys out, and the surveys each time still came back where close to 2/3 of the parents that were surveyed and throughout the time wanted to send their kids back to school in some fashion. And we kept trying to narrow that down and understand where the parents are at now. And I think that, you know, the board made those decisions, or we've supported your move towards bringing the kids back to school based on that information. I'm not speaking for the board. I'm just my understanding that I don't believe this board was bullied by any particular group of parents. But with that said, I do have to agree with some of the comments that, and I think it was somewhat not surprising to us, but because I think originally we thought when we surveyed the parents, there might have been a closer to 50-50 split between kids coming back and kids staying virtual. And it seems to be, based on the numbers that I'm hearing, it's probably closer to 75% coming in to 25% doing virtual. Is that a pretty fair assessment?
Yeah, that's pretty much how the data came back to us. If you looked at you would need to throw in the non-committals. When you throw the non-committals in, I think that pushed us up into the 70% range. Am I right, Mr. Frizzo? He's my resident data man.
Sorry, I got to keep my mask on. Sorry. So I could pull those numbers up, but generally speaking, we're in that 65 to 70% range of people being in person, 30 to 35% choosing virtual or Springford Cyber.
And that's, you know, but I do have a concern that what we have, and I know that we got to I know you're trying to mitigate this. And I guess my question is will it be mitigated? How soon do you think it will be mitigated? But I think the classes that from a virtual standpoint that have that higher numbers, I think are going to be, my personal feeling is going to be problematic for the students and as well as the teacher trying to successfully educate, go through the curriculum with that many students virtually. So I know that you said that you're looking for substitutes, but is there if we don't get a substitute, is there plan B? I mean, do we have a plan B? Are we thinking about a plan B? Is there something we can do to minimize the number of students that are in those virtual classrooms?
Well, in short answer, no. For example, 6th grade, we've got 6 classes and are right at 30 each. I have no more staff. I don't have another teacher. If I had another teacher, I'd put it to it. And it does come down to staffing. We have found that substitute teachers do not want to teach virtually, and they will not do it. They may be willing to come in and do an in-person class. They will not teach virtually. And that's what we have found. And so we're having to use, for the most part, the staffing that we have. And as much as I'd like to say, yes, there's a plan B for those 30 kids in 6th grade in the 6 virtual classes, I don't have that. We don't have people. And so it's really, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of those classes go a little bit higher, but I will say that for the majority of the virtual classes in K through 6, we have additional capacity. There may be some parents out there that because we moved into substantial are now not happy with the decision that they made to send their children back to school. We can accommodate those requests, some of those requests to an extent, to a point. But I can't make a promise that we can accommodate everyone because I do have, for example, 6th grade is going to be very difficult to accommodate. I'm looking at my 2nd grade in Upper Providence. I've got 28 students in 2nd grade in that virtual class. That's problematic. Now, having said that, I do have capacity in other buildings in other virtual classes. So if I do run into a situation where a parent is absolutely adamant that their child must be virtual, then it may be a matter of them having to go to a class that is meeting with a teacher from another building. That's the best we can do. And so, I mean, we'll try our best to work with parents should they choose to change their decision, but there is a limit to that. And I may not be able to accommodate that for the building that you're currently attending. Now, they had also asked about what would it look like once we come back from virtual? There's another question, isn't there? Because we do have those sixth grade classes that are right at 30, and I'm looking at the classes that are in person around 19 and 20 for sixth grade. So the in-person classes are the 19, 20, 22 range, 23 the highest, and the virtual classes are at 30. So when you bring those students back, I can balance those classes, but it will require some moving. There's no way around it. There's no way I can do it any other way.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, because, just two other quick questions. So what you're saying is that, because that was the other question that was brought up, what you're saying is that because information has changed, and really it's just changed within the last week, if parents want to change to a virtual model, it's limited into the decisions that we can make there, right?
That's correct, Mr. Bello, but we will do our best to make the accommodation. As we've been doing.
Right. So then I was going to ask another question about, because it really wasn't an update, but I've heard from several parents and even a couple of teachers that at the elementary level, the students that were given computers, but we're telling them if they come back to school in person, not to bring the computers. They're not going to be using the computers in the classroom. Is that accurate? Because I want to make sure I'm understanding what is being said.
We don't have, when we initially did the laptop deployment to our students, we had a number of families that did not request a laptop because they had a device at home. And so we deployed all the laptops that we have, and they're all out. But we are not looking at those students having to bring those laptops back into the classrooms at the elementaries. Dr. Murray, am I correct? I'm speaking correctly. I thought I was. It's been a while since I've visited this one, but it is correct. We will not be asking those students to bring their laptops back in with them.
So, all right. I had a couple questions. I guess the first question has to do with distancing within the classrooms.
Okay.
So we're talking about, a variety of different class sizes. And we certainly, I know, you and administration has worked very hard to try to get rid of all of the unnecessary furniture within a room. What are we looking at in terms of, I guess, the closest, setting, if you will, within a classroom, and how tight are we in some of these rooms?
Well, first of all, let me explain how we're measuring. We measure from where the student is sitting, not the desk to desk. Right. So if we have students sitting right here, 5 feet over, there's another student. 5 feet over here, there's another student. In a majority of classes, as I'm looking at the in-person numbers, we're going to reach minimum 5 feet. If I look at these numbers right here of the in-person decisions, we are at minimum 5 feet. Now, I know that the board received an email from a staff member indicating that there was only 2 feet between desks, and there were 2 reasons for that. Number one, don't move your desks. There's little tape marks on the floor. That's where the desks need to stay. Don't be moving the desks around. Secondly, Yeah, and that's the most important thing. Don't move your desks. We've set them up for a reason like that. There's tape on the floor, and just so that we can make sure that, because the maintenance team and the custodial team went around and set every classroom up to get the maximum space that we possibly can. We were looking at it at the Flex building, the 5-6. We were looking at a max of 28 students in the class. I have, in no situation do I have even near 28 in-person students in the 5-6. We were looking at a max of 24 at the elementaries with a minimum distance of 5 feet. I'm looking at my numbers in my elementaries, and we're well below the 24 to get that distance. So I would be safe by, I think I could safely say that at minimum, we're at 5 feet, in most cases 6. That based upon the numbers that I see that are choosing to be in person.
Dr. Gooden, maybe we can clarify this. Is it better to say that the overall calculation is based on the center line of desk to center line of desk? That might make it easier for people to understand, because I think otherwise they're going to be looking at from my shoulder to her shoulder versus the center line of the desk to the next center line of the desk. Is that calculation?
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
That's exactly how we're doing it.
So another question I had was, how many more teachers do we need this year? So again, looking at kind of going to this, the virtual as well as in person. Obviously, we've added some classes and class, groupings. How many additional teachers do we have this year that over what we would have otherwise estimated?
I think you're asking me, let me just rephrase what you're asking me. You're asking me how many subs do we have on our roster? Is that basically it?
Or how many additional classes do we have versus what we normally would in a given school year with the current enrollment?
I believe we're looking, and we've got around at least 25. Is it up? 25 subs? No, more or less?
I don't believe that's what she's asking. I believe
I'm not sure.
Yeah, what she's asking is, going back to my question, which she's kind of piggybacking off of, if we were going to reduce the class sizes,
Yeah, I mean,
how many
because we
additional
have,
teachers would you need?
right, no, not if we're going to reduce sizes.
Well, I mean-
We have already reduced class sizes. We
Right.
have a number of classes that we're looking at that might be 13, 14, 15 students. Because of that, we obviously have more classes. So given that we have more classes, how many more classes do we have in the K through 6 level than we
Sure.
otherwise would have given the current enrollment?
So at the elementary level, we have an extra PM kindergarten at Evans Elementary School. And we have an extra virtual session at Limerick Elementary School. And we are looking to have an extra 6th grade virtual section at the 6th grade center.
So one of the questions that references what you had said, Dr. Gooden, is that we don't, when you're talking with subs, that they don't want to do the virtual piece. Is it possible that some of the teachers that we have already might be willing to switch over to a virtual, and you bring the subs and let them come into the classroom? Is that something that's being given some consideration at all?
No, because that would mean taking the sub pool that we have and using them for a long-term situation. We have a pool of subs right now that we're going to try to fill in the gaps whenever we have folks out, and quite frankly, there's not enough of them. One of the issues that we're going to have to contend with is, what do we do when we don't have enough subs for our classrooms? Because on a good year, we could need 60 subs on a Friday, and we would not be able to fill those numbers, and we would have to make decisions about combining classes, et cetera, et cetera. As it stands right now, we're in a situation where we'll use the sub that we have. We have dedicated sub pool that's just working for Spring Forward, but it will be all hands on deck. As long as they don't ask me to go in and teach a virtual class, I'm good. I think I can do the in-person, but it will be all hands on deck. Everybody certificated in the district could possibly be subbing in a classroom.
So then I want to take Ms. Melton's question just a tad further then. How many, and I'm going to distinguish between sub and temporary teacher, because I don't want to confuse the two. What I'm talking about is that if I got 30 kids in a virtual class, I'm not comfortable with. So that what I'm saying is that we would need an additional temporary teacher to be able to reduce 30 students into 20 students.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be one additional temporary teacher.
Right.
So for us to be able to reduce, because it doesn't seem like the issue is the in-service, not in-service, the in-student,
In-person,
it's the virtual. And how many temporary teachers do we think we would need to bring those numbers down to more of a manageable number of students in a virtual room?
Well, obviously at the 6th grade level, you put another virtual teacher in and you know, you're gonna bring those classes down to, you know, take 4 off each room and bring it down to about 26. The problem that we're having though is finding that individual to teach
No,
that.
I understand that. All I'm asking is, do we know how many what's our target? Do we need 2? Do we need, what do we need, 6? I mean, what's a target number so we understand what you're talking about? I know it's going to be challenging. I'm just trying to understand, because I'll be honest, I'm not overly excited about that many students in a virtual room. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
Well, we're trying to find one 6th grade teacher to do virtual.
Ideally, yes, we will need one more teacher at the 6th grade level, which we are working on. There was late breaking news this afternoon, so we're working on that piece of it. And then to address Upper Providence Elementary School, and there's one other elementary school. So ideally, if we could get 3 more, that'd be fantastic. We are working very closely with our subservice to obtain those individuals.
Can we go back to determine the definition of readiness? We can circle back with all the other peripheral information. So when we say we're ready, I just got a list, Dr. Gooden. I just want to make sure. I'm kind of quirky sometimes, so please bear with me. So when we say we're ready, from a transportation perspective, we're ready beyond what potential hiccups with some lack of drivers. We're ready from a food service preparation perspective.
Yes.
We're ready with an overall cleaning program for the building.
Yes.
We are ready with the classroom layout for all the desks.
Yes.
We are ready with an air filtration system in place. How are we going to address as far as cleaning with the filters? I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
We are ready with nurses as far as how that's set up. We're ready with a quarantine room.
Yes.
We are ready with the sanitation system that's going to be on the buses.
That will not be installed yet, but it is being installed.
Okay. And we're ready with all technology for teachers in place.
Yes.
Okay. So the other one, the air filtration system, I'm very comfortable with Mr. Hunter, but I just want to make sure that that system is in place. Okay.
Do you want to, Mr. Hunter's here.
Yep.
Yeah, as far as our HVAC systems, all systems have been serviced, ready for the beginning of the school year. They're due for their second filter change service. That's going to be over the winter break, but we are ready to go. Everything's in place.
Thank you, sir. That's it.
Okay, so I just want to address a few of the things too that you said, Dr. Gooden, and that we heard in the comments. As far as transparency is concerned, I do think that you have been transparent. I do think the board has been transparent. This new information, this myriad of guidelines or recommendations that the county is now considering or giving to us is an update, is something very new to us
Mhm.
and very new to the district. And when we made the plans previously to go forward and to roll this out and to get going on November 12th, we made it with the knowledge that we had at the time. Things have changed as of Thursday night, Friday morning, and again, more discussion today. Things have changed, but Springford, the administration has made efforts to give a quality product based on the information that was available to us, based on the survey information, as Mr. DeVello mentioned, based on what could be done and the key points that Mr. Jackson just went through in terms of where the readiness is. So the best product is being put forth and rolled out on Thursday. And that was all in working with the guidelines that were out there, whether the community supported those, didn't support those. One group did, one group didn't. What we had to work with is what we went with. And now that's changed because it is fluid. It's not that we're letting you know as it's coming to us. So they are looking that the transmission isn't happening in the schools. They're looking to say that you can look at your municipalities, which is something I think that we've wanted that consideration. So with these different pieces coming into play, it again has to change and adjust as necessary.
Yeah.
So I just want to reiterate that's also very important. And I hope that we are ready to go and that it really is that quality product that Springford is known to deliver as best we can starting this Thursday.
Yeah, and I just to reiterate, today I was on the call with the county superintendents and with the county health department for about 2.5 hours. And as soon as I got off that call, then that's when I drafted, we drafted the communique that we put out to our families. So we are trying to get out the information as quickly as we can. This is fluid. It is changing. And I realize that we are insubstantial. And if the information that the county is relaying to me indicated that there was a problem with opening school, I would have come in tonight and said, we shouldn't do this. We're now insubstantial. I'm being told that we should not be doing this. That is not what the county is telling me. They're telling me that school is safe and the schools that are open are not seeing the issues. Yes, they have some positive cases, but they're not seeing the transmission or the spread within the buildings. And they've got protocols in place for quarantining, et cetera, that we also have. And so we do believe, and I know that we've been charged and accused of not wanting to bring our kids back, but that's simply not true. We certainly want our kids back. We believe we can do this successfully. And the information I'm getting from the county and from my peers in the county is that we can do this successfully.
Yeah, I just want to agree with you. And I also think that, I mean, in September, we weren't ready. We didn't have the layered protocols. We didn't have the knowledge. Now, I mean, and the medical experts are continually telling us and everybody that if you have those layered protocols, you will prevent transmission. And they know how to do that. They know how to do it in the medical facilities. They know how to do it in nursing homes. They now know how to do it in schools. And that education is one of the most important things. And that the medical experts are saying we need to get back to it since now we know how to protect the staff and the students. So now we've done all the hard work. I mean, I can't say how much, there were hundreds of tasks, and to call them tasks is just not even accurate. They were large projects. 10 departments in this school district had hundreds and hundreds of tasks that they've been working on since September. None of this has been turnkey. Everybody thought it should have been, but it just isn't. Every single piece of this school district had to be changed and changed again and changed again.
Yeah.
And everybody has done the hard work. And I really feel as though, you know, there is a lot of safety layers in place, and that's what we're doing. And that's what the doctors are saying we should be doing. And then it will prevent transmission.
And Dr. Gooden, just to confirm and to share with everybody, I think one of the key elements of this is that while Montgomery County as a whole has reached the substantial level, our area, the Springford area, has not. and we continue to be arguably in the moderate, correct, between Upper Providence, Royersford, Limerick, and Spring City, we continue to be in a moderate level. And so that is one of the key elements here that we are continuing. And now the Montgomery County Department of Health, as well as CHOP physicians and the county have advised that that is a good model to follow, is to follow our municipalities and our footprint.
Yeah, and I live in Berks County, and Berks County has been substantial for weeks, and their schools they're open, and they're doing so successfully. I believe we can do as well, if not better. It's not just the students that I'm concerned about. I'm also concerned about the safety and welfare of my staff, and I don't want to be in a situation where we are not doing the best that we possibly can. And I would remind the staff that it is important once students come back into the building that you do not congregate in faculty rooms, et cetera, with your masks off. And I've already seen it. So I want to remind the staff, don't do that. Wear your face covering in all situations. If you come into my office, I'm immediately going to put my face covering on. And that's what I expect the staff to do. I also expect the staff to practice social distancing and to keep your hands washed. Those simple things are so important to combating spread. And it's been this is the way it's been for months now. And so for those schools that are doing and following those protocols, they're not seeing issues within their schools. And so I encourage and remind the staff that we all have to be vigilant. I also want to speak directly to our families, especially with Thanksgiving coming up. What we are finding in the county, and this is straight from the county, is that the problems are occurring outside of school. They're occurring with family gatherings. They're occurring with travel sports teams. All of these things that are happening outside of school that's where this contact tracing is leading folks to. And so they're not finding it occurring in schools. And that's an important statement. And that's important that the community know that it's not occurring. It's occurring outside in things that families are doing. And so
another area was carpooling. So if your kids are carpooling to school, make sure they're wearing their masks, because they were safer on the bus where they were masked. So really make sure that the kids carpooling together wearing their masks in the carpool.
It's going to take all of us working together to make this work. If we have families, and I've already gone on record that students that refuse to wear their masks, unless there's an outlying reason, a medical reason, they will not be here. I'm not going to put up with it. So if you're going to send your child back to school, they will be wearing a face covering, or they will not be here. They'll be virtual. Now, I can't make that any clearer. Same with my staff. When you come back in, everybody's back in, you're in the faculty room, you need to have your face covering on, unless you're eating. And if or you could just take some Cheerios and put them in there and just eat like that. But it's serious. It's going to take all of us working together to make this work. This is the time for the Springport community to come together. And I know that we've gone through some rough times here. We've gone through about 4 months of difficulty. It's been tough. It's been brutal. And it's time for us to pull together and make this thing work. But it's going to require all of us working together, because if we can't all work together, we're going to go straight back to virtual. And that's what's going to happen. So we have to be vigilant. We have to be attentive. We've asked parents to do not send your sick children to school. And we need you to do that. I know in the past, when Johnny got up and Johnny was sick, suck it up and go on in, but we don't want that anymore. Same with our staff. There have been a couple situations that I've stayed home just simply because I didn't feel well. And I just work from home, and we're doing the same thing with our staff. So it is going to take all of us working together to make this work. I believe we can, but it's going to require a team effort.
I have one question to clarify to myself and for any others. When they say that they found that the transmissions were not in school, they were out of school, did they make any comments about what is the likelihood that that would not be the case or increase once we bring all the kids back to school coming from these other events where the transmissions were occurring? I just want to be clear on what they mean by that.
Well, what they're saying is that their meaning is that when you trace it back and find the source, it's not coming from coming out of the
Right.
school. They were around somebody out in the public who was positive, and then it went, and that's where it came from as they go through their contact tracing. And really, one of the questions that was asked today with the county among the superintendents is there a difference in community levels between schools that are in person and the schools that are virtual? And there is no difference,
Okay.
whether they're in school, in person, or they're out of school.
Right, so they're
We weren't
saying
seeing
that we're preventing in-person transmission, so that means we're not a vector.
Right.
Right, got it.
Dr. Goodnight, I do appreciate all the information that you've provided us with tonight. I appreciate that Clinton, Mr. Jackson went down the list and reminding us of the preparedness, and also Mrs. Fazzini, of all the different things that we have done to get to this point. It is a learning process, not just for us, but for our nation or for the world. We are a little bit later coming into this with bringing our students back into the building because we had made the decision early on to allow for the technology professional development to be in place. So because of that, we have had the opportunity to see some of that data collection at the county level, which we were talking about tonight, and also to see how some of the other schools have done it. I do know that you and the other superintendents have been spending a lot of time with the Montgomery County Department of Health, and that the school board members have had that opportunity also to listen to some of the data that has come through, which is reassuring as far as what you've talked about, but not shutting down whole areas, maybe, but looking at what we need, more targeted and the causes and things. One of the things that they had spoken about is the layering of prevention. The masks, wearing the masks, they have found that is effective with the data. The distancing they have found to be effective. The small gatherings also to be effective. These are things that now as the data comes in, they are finding effective. The tracking is another layer. The contact tracking and the quarantining of students and staff and is effective. To kind of touch on what Mr. DeBello had said, I am concerned too. I think our weakness is that we have that social distancing part, and with the class sizes still continue to be larger than any of us would like. And I know that you've explained why it is the way it is, and all those other layers that we've done. But I do appreciate the efforts, the continued efforts to find ways to get the in-person classroom sizes down for that, one of those layers of distancing and small group gathering, and also the virtual class size down for the management, the academic part that is a concern. I know that you are being innovative and looking at things and pulling other staff, and I just want to encourage you to continue to do that. I'm not satisfied with those group sizes. I do recognize everything else that's in place, and I'm, supportive of this in all other parts, but that this is what keeps me up at night, is that we are missing some of these components of the layering that we know is effective. With regards to whether, that we have hit substantial at this point, I'm comfortable with the idea that the county has said that we should be in a phase for like 2 weeks, a category for like 2 weeks before we start pivoting and flipping back and forth. We are on a trajectory to open this week. So, that we need to, if we remain in substantial for 2 weeks, then we need to, that's when what we had said, the county had said that we would be doing. But I know that I would, and it's kind of lose-lose in this. If we move kids out of the classrooms, they move to virtual, or virtual numbers go up. So I appreciate your continued efforts to get those class sizes down. I know you're working on it, still continuing to work on it. We heard that tonight here, but it's that one of the piece that we still don't have, and we're moving forward. I know I'm not alone in that, but thank you.
No, you're not alone in that. I mean, that's concerning to me too. I am happy to hear that. I wouldn't say happy. I'm more pleased to hear that the spacing is a minimum of 5 feet center line to center line, but more likely greater than that was the maybe connotation I took away from what Dr. Gooden said. But that does remain a concern, because it is one of those layers of protection that have been put out there. I will also say that I've continued to speak with the neighboring board presidents, and most of them have that same concern about the younger grades, and if they were to bring all of them in, could they get that spacing? It sounds like we're approaching it. We may be able to do this with continued efforts to bring the numbers down in person and virtually, maybe by more going virtually and being able to get those other teachers or temporary teachers, as Mr. DeBello said earlier. So I know that you're continuing to work on that, and I hope that will continue to happen, so that having those students there, I don't want to miss that layer of protection and have us go into a tailspin where we have to backtrack, because
Right.
that's not what we want to do here. We want to move forward.
Right. And I know, I'm sure you've considered, the moving of staff. I'd rather see my child give up gym if the state allows it, and pull a gym teacher or something to cover other classes. But if we look like at Evans, we have a kindergarten class with 20 kids in it. And we have 4th grade classes with 25 in it. The 6th grade virtual classes, if we don't find coverage for those virtual classes, which is not the face-to-face distancing, but they're already moving above that 30 already in there, and it's a concern.
So 2 quick questions then. I never really got an answer. You started to answer it, but I don't think I really got, I'm still trying to understand, if we're not going to be utilizing computers in the classroom and we're pushing the whole Canvas concept, what are the kids going to be doing if we don't have the technology in the classroom? And so I'd like to get that answer. But again, when I was talking about the class sizes, I was more concerned about the virtual class sizes than I was the in-person, because I think Mr. Hunter and his team did a really good job of getting the maximizing of the space. And I think that we have less areas of concerns, but like I said, I'm concerned about the virtual classes with 30 plus kids. And I think that's you're going to be inundated tomorrow with requests from parents that are going to shift the in-person to virtual, so we have to look at that real quick. But I want to go back to the computers because I'm trying to understand if we're not utilizing technology in the classrooms, then what's the goal? Like, how's this going to work?
For the elementaries? Yeah. Well, I know it's been a long time, but there was a time we didn't have technology in classrooms.
I understand that, but we shifted our educational
I
model
know.
to utilizing technology in the classroom. So I'm just trying to understand if we're not going to use, if we're telling the kids that we're not going to be using computers in the classroom, then what's the shift back? And how does that work with, how does that impact or not impact Canvas?
So we have a couple of things that we've been looking at. The first decision was why we're not bringing in the laptops, and that's for a couple of reasons. But one, we need to make sure that if at any point we need to go back to virtual, that all of our students have a device at home to work from, so we can make that switch at any point in time if we need to. So those devices will eventually be coming back in. We're just not doing it right now. The other aspect, we did talk about whether or not we wanted the kids to bring them in with them, but with K-6, we did not distribute devices one-to-one. So not all of our students would have a district issued device from K-6. So if we were to have them bring in the devices that we do have, some kids would have devices and some wouldn't. And the only way to do that then would be to share. And we didn't want to go down that route either. So right now we're saying not bringing in the devices, keep them at home so that, again, if we need to go virtual later, we don't have to redeploy them. Now, having said that, we'll continue to use Canvas. It just may not be in the classroom. So the teachers can do a flipped lesson style where some of the content might be on Canvas at home and maybe some of their homework would be on Canvas at home. And then they just wouldn't be using it in the classroom. The other thing we did was develop a distribution plan for when the ordered Chromebooks come in. We still have 1,500 Chromebooks that we've ordered that we're waiting for. When those come in, we already have a deploy plan as to what that's going to look like and getting carts back into the elementary buildings as soon as those do come back in. The last piece I wanted to mention too is we did work as a department to identify all of the impacts, the curricular impacts that not having devices in the classroom are going to do, so that we have that listed so that we understand exactly what that is, what the impact is, and then some suggestions on how we can adapt based on that.
Okay, and then the other question I have is that Mr. Jackson asked a question that we're, from a technology standpoint with the teachers, we're ready. So I was hoping to hear an update from Mr. Catalano or somebody regarding how many consultants did we bring in? How's that going? What's the metrics associated to that? How many teachers were completed, or are they all completed? Is everything up and running? Can we get, because I mean, there was a lot of questions when we approved this, and I just want to see, where we're at.
So in 7 to 12, we had 313 teachers that needed to be addressed, personally visited, rooms, diagnosed, et cetera. Of the 313, we've been to every single room. 301 are complete. 12 teachers are not complete. The only reason is that they have not been in the buildings, or we could not coordinate with them. We have reached out to them individually and made individual appointments with them, and we will meet with them between now and the first day of school. If they are not coming in until the first day of school, we will meet them before class to make sure they are situated. As for temps, I personally vetted 10 temps. We currently have 5 on staff. They've been amazing. We're knocking out projects left and right. We're way further along than we thought we'd be. We're 100% ready for our launch on the 12th. And then for our transfer of classes, we've set up a sandbox and a third test instance of Canvas to simulate the rollover on the 12th to make sure everything is ready for that, for all our software classes, programs, et cetera.
Is that too close to do the rollover? If you do it on, you're doing it on the 11th, the roll?
The deadline was today at noon for all the changes to be in.
Understood.
We uploaded that into our sandbox and we'll be testing that. We're going to set the date ahead. Almost, we're going to go back to the future and simulate that for the next 2.5 days. We're having some of the secretaries and principals verify the information. Curriculum is helping us with that. But for the next 2.5 days, we will simulate it being the 12th to make sure all our i's are dotted and t's are crossed.
And plan B, we would do it manually if we run into hiccups going into the 12th?
I'm sorry, the audio is bad.
We would, what's plan B? You know, I always like to have a plan B and C. We're doing the rollover, everything's been uploaded. So today is the 9th. So the 10th, 11th, I'm saying if we go into the 12th with hiccups, what's our plan B?
We've already done a full simulation and we've had no issues. The
No
only
issues.
issues we had were some user errors, importing the data.
Okay,
We're good.
okay.
So the good news, so great job, obviously. I mean, that's ahead of schedule. You only have a dozen teachers left to go. That's incredible. And you were able to do that with basically 5 temps. You said, did I hear that right?
Correct. 5 are currently here. Yes.
Well, how many temps did you use to get it all done, roughly?
Well, I used all 5 of them to do part 1 of the project. I look at it as 3 phases. Step 1 was getting them all set up. Step 2 is to support them during this virtual launch. And step 3 is to get us back up to speed with the 300 to 400% of volume that we're having right now.
Right, and which is great because that's going to lead to my next question. Because when we were talking about this, and I was talking about when you were going over your numbers and your anticipation of spend, and then you had your burn rate, which you were assuming, which obviously you didn't actually come anywhere near that, of spending about $120,000, and you were going to have roughly $30,000 left over that you figured that you would use, over time. And one of the things I mentioned at the time was that that's great from a metric standpoint, but we should start figuring out what is the rest of the year going to look like, because that's the number. So I don't need you to answer that tonight, but what you need to do is roll forward your planning on your metrics and saying, I'm going to need these number of temps for this amount of time till June. And then we could go back and revisit that number, because you may have, if you're able to achieve everything you achieve with 5 temps, because you originally were shooting for 19, right? So if you're able to get to where we are right now, then you may only need 5 temps or maybe a few more temps to help with the tickets that are going to come in. But at some point because I don't want you to come back in March or wherever and say, oh, guess what? I need to, you know what I mean? I'm trying to get ahead of it a little bit and say, what is it going to look like spend wise between now, looking at what you haven't spent, what you think you're going to spend by the end of this year, and then what you think you're going to need from January to June. So I would if you can, I would try to put those numbers together, and let's get in front of that sooner than later.
Absolutely. We'll take the data, we'll evaluate it, and we'll bring it back to the board.
So is next week achievable, you think, or not really?
I'll only have 3 weeks worth of data then, but I can absolutely project.
Okay. Huh? Or what did I say, next week? 2 weeks, the next board meeting.
Even better. Thank you.
Okay. And then Dr. Gooden, I'm going to end with that based on, I know you've kind of said it in your update, but what is your official recommendation for Thursday from you and administration?
We're ready to roll.
I understand that. That's what I'm asking. What's your recommendation? Can start school on Thursday or no?
Yes. I believe we can start school, and my recommendation is we start school.
As planned.
We need to get our kids back in.
Well, I understand that, but you're saying your recommendation is to start as planned at this point.
Yes. Yes.
Were you bullied or coerced into that decision?
No.
Where were you on Saturday, June 13th?
Okay, any more comments,
Yeah,
questions?
I got one
anything?
question. Mr. Solicitor, in the early part of the meeting, one of the parents brought up that when they did this survey, it was defined as a binding contract. Since we're not following that now, does that give them a legal out to go virtual if they want to, or make another decision? Is there any latitude there?
No, and I'll tell you why. First off, I don't think the term contract was ever used. It wasn't a binding contract. It was the district's ability on how they were going to develop both in-person virtual programming. And districts have relied on that information in terms of how they were able to deploy staff. As circumstances may change and give the administration some flexibility to modify that may occur. But ultimately, districts throughout the state have relied on those surveys, and circumstances do change, but it doesn't change districts' positions ultimately.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Gooden, for the update, and thank you for everyone on the administration for getting us ready to go on Thursday. And here's hoping for a smooth rollout, and we support your efforts. So please keep us apprised, and we are looking forward to seeing the fruition of your efforts come together on Thursday. Okay, so we will move now into board and committee reports. And the first one we have here tonight, which we haven't done these in a while, so it's nice to get back to a little bit of board business. First one we're going to do tonight is community relations. We did meet, it was Wednesday, November 4th, we met. The committee discussed options for live streaming board and committee meetings, focusing on the difference between Zoom and YouTube. Springford has live streamed meetings on YouTube for quite a few years and is going to continue to do so. For the immediate future, we will continue to use Zoom as well to allow for community participation from home, which we have seen an uptick in that. We talked in that meeting about the numbers over time at the different meetings when they spiked, when we were discussing major decision-making. You could see that there was a spike in those numbers. So we will continue to offer that. And as I've said previously, I do think Zoom may be a silver lining from COVID because we've learned how to use that in a number of different ways to interact with each other. And that is the difference between Zoom and YouTube, the ability to interact. Okay, so Ms. Crew also provided a brief update from the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. While still in its infancy stages, she shared with us that the committee does have 4 subcommittees. Those 4 subcommittees are professional development, students, community, and curriculum. Our community is already beginning to see some changes, such as the translation feature in the weekly updated emails. Additional information will be shared through monthly newsletters and eventually through weekly updates. I will say, I believe there are 4 languages, Ms. Crew, is that correct, that we're translating now to? Can you just quickly come up and give us those? And we did have an example of this during the committee meeting. It was very interesting to see how effective this translation tool is. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. We translate now to Spanish, Simple Chinese, Vietnamese, and Arabic. And I worked with Dr. Moyer and his staff over there at Brook to identify our top 4 languages. We do have some long-term plans to work with Skylert to make more specific changes. Right now, the process is a number of steps that I take, and we're hoping to be able to make those changes directly through Skylert, hopefully for next school year.
That's great. Okay. Well, that definitely is a first step in the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and the first product from them. Thank you, Ms. Crew, for that. The committee also discussed a communication feedback form that will be sent to all families out of Ms. Crew's office. And she shared an update for us also about the new suggestion box, which is on the website now. Mr. Rothermel stated, or he shared an update with us from RCTV. In 2018, RCTV covered 10 events from September through November. 15 events have been covered during the time frame, that same time frame in 2019. And so far this school year, RCTV has covered 37 events. So he has definitely been very busy, very proud of him for that. And we want to keep that going. So our next meeting will be in January. That date is yet to be determined, but we will be getting that information out as soon as that is decided. So that is the Community Relations Committee report. Are there any questions? Okay, moving on then. Mr. Schaefer, are you on the Zoom for extracurricular?
I believe I am on the Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, all right, the extracurricular committee met on the same night at 7:30, and the October meeting minutes were approved. And I'm going to provide a quick summary for what was discussed. And then at the end, Mr. McDaniel, I believe you're participating in this evening's meeting. If there are any updates with regards to some of our teams that I am missing, I would appreciate it if you would just fill in the gaps. So first off, a huge acknowledgement for everyone involved, starting with administration, the coaches, student athletes, and all of the parents for once reporting that we finished all of the sports this year is a big accomplishment. So there were a significant amount of extra steps. I've reported on this in previous meetings. A lot of work that was undertaken by the coaches and for the leaders all season long to ensure that activities continued. And I'm sincerely happy to report that they all did and completed. So very, very big thank you to everyone involved on the leadership and for all of our student athletes and participants. Now, as far as the accomplishments go for the fall sports, girls tennis, we're going to start with girls tennis. So as it was previously announced, and I believe as everyone is aware, this was the first time Spring-Ford had a state championship. So state championship, district championship, league championship. And I would like to, in addition to obviously congratulating our student athletes on a fantastic accomplishment, they had a great welcome back to town parade. A sincere thank you to Chief Boyer and all members of our local fire companies, ambulance and police who helped create, I think, a very special memory for these great student athletes. So congratulations and thank you. The cross country boys were PAC champions. This was the fourth time in school history. So that's a huge accomplishment. The girls soccer were PAC champions as well. And this was the fourth time in school history that they've won the league. The update for them is I believe they play tomorrow night in a District 1 semifinals game. So they're still going. It's away at Downingtown West, but it's versus Downingtown East. So that is a great season, and it's still ongoing for our girls soccer. Our high school football team repeated as PAC champions. This was the program's 13th league championship. And again, they were welcomed back into town after they won their league. As fire companies, police, and first responders. And so thank you again. Their season sadly ended this past Friday with a District 1 playoff loss to Souderton. One last note for the high school sports. The boys soccer is also still alive in the district playoffs. They play tomorrow at home, 7 o'clock versus Penridge in a District 1 playoff. So best of luck to our girls and boys soccer teams. So Mr. McDaniel, did I miss anything before I continue if you're still a part of this meeting?
No, you did not, Mr. Schaefer.
Okay, I appreciate that. So some other notes, PIAA protocols for winter sports were coming out. They're possibly reviewing pushing back the starting date. Mr. McDaniel will advise us if that happens. Ms. Melton requested and discussed about our maximum capacity for our winter sports facilities, with which Mr. McDaniel stated that we have all the numbers on file and we shouldn't have any issues like experienced with the stadium and the county. On that end, we're hoping to get an update on the progress to gain the correct outdoor stadiums maximum number, hopefully by next meeting. So then Mr. Regner and Mrs. Nulliviller presented on the clubs and activities. Just a few highlights with respect to everyone's time this evening, as I will share these notes with everyone. There are 36 clubs that are starting in the high school in November. The indoor guard, indoor percussion has already started. Some great news here. The health and safety plans have been submitted. So we're having plans for a spring musical, and that's planned for March. Orchestra and chorus have also started. And we did ask, and this is just a point of a future reference, but we asked for hopefully a brief highlight video to be created, especially from the 7th grade side, that we would be able to watch in future meetings. Almost done here. In other business, the topic of sports fields and the usage and need for the potential of additional turf fields was discussed. Direction was given to administration at this point to continue the exploration for future planning purposes with more information welcome at the next meeting. Administration is going to utilize the study that the district invested in 2006 as a start, even though we recognize that there have been some facility changes and certainly the enrollment and usage has increased, but it's a good starting point. It was then discussed that this would eventually be brought before the property committee, but for now we would continue to have administration explore this topic within this committee. And we had 3 publics to be heard. Dan Collins attended in person and presented remarks in support of turf fields. His points included safety, saving operating costs, curriculum improvements, and athletic advantages, while recognizing that the pricing during this economic time may have some significant incentives for the district. Paul Solomon commented via Zoom in favor of turf fields and how organizations like the Springford Youth Lacrosse could potentially rent access to additional turfs if they were available, which could generate some offsetting income. Chuck Baker, also on Zoom, commented in favor of planning and the turf fields. We adjourned at 8:36. Are there any questions?
Mr. Schaefer, I think just a point of clarification. When you said that with the girls tennis, that was the first time in school history of a state championship. I just want to make sure that people understand that you're referring to tennis specifically, because we've had other state championships here at Springford as well.
That is correct. Yes. I think by saying girls tennis, that would have meant that's
Yeah,
good.
but I just want to, clarity is always good.
I'm glad you bring it up and not picking on me, which you could be, and that's fine as well.
Well, I'm not picking on you yet.
Mr. Schaefer, maybe I missed your comment regarding the turf fields, that you would want to bring that over to property.
It was suggested in the meeting that if this progresses, Mr. Jackson, that eventually it would be, and I guess this is protocol from the last time this happened, that it's ultimately a property recommendation. So we just thought we would have administration continue. And then if there was further action, it would be brought forth for property committee in future months.
All right, thank you.
And Mr. Jackson, I suggested that because I think that turf fields, this is just my personal opinion, like roofs and new scoreboards should be part of the facilities plan. And I also think that it should be something that should be in a long-term plan so that the cost, because we're the one, property is the one who's going to have to maintain them and know when they're going to have to be replaced. And I think it should be, the cost should be spread out. And I think it should be part of the capital plan. And I also think the 10, 20 year, and we have a debt that's going to be dropping off and we have to plan for that. So I thought the whole thing, their need should be brought over to us and we should incorporate it. That was my idea.
I agree completely. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Mr. Schaefer on extracurricular? Great, thank you, Mr. Schaefer. And Mrs. Melton, do you want to cover for us the Western update?
Yeah, I don't have my notes with me since I wasn't aware that I was presenting until you just asked me. So I will go by memory and a couple notes I jotted down. Western Montgomery Center board met on Monday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. One of the points of discussion and approved items was the cosmetology salon will be reopening. They'll be beginning that at 2:30 in the afternoon so that it's after students have cleared out in order to minimize any kind of potential for COVID spread or transmission. The plan is that people will schedule appointments. When they arrive, they will remain in their cars. When it's time for them to come in, they will be notified, and then they'll come in, they'll be met at the door and escorted to their stations. Stations will have dividers, so they're really doing a lot of work in order to make sure that students continue to be able to practice their skills and have opportunities in front of them and get the hours that they need in order to be able to sit for their licensing tests. Another point that was highlighted was that, again, their Western Center has reiterated, as Dr. Gooden had shared, that they have not had any transmissions within the building of COVID. They are really, really proud of the families and students and have reinforced just how awesome everybody has been. If students have been ill, families have been keeping them home. They haven't been coming in, so it has not been posing a risk. Students have been awesome at maintaining social distancing, keeping their masks on. And these are really just good stories for us to, kind of take in and recognize and make sure that we can continue to do here within our buildings as well. One of the big takeaways with regards to that is that they are sending blast reminders out every few days, every week, reminding families, reminding students, masking, social distancing. If you're sick, stay home, those kinds of things. So that's, from a communication perspective, that's a huge takeaway. Just that constant reminder, I think, will reinforce everybody hopefully doing the right thing the right way. A note that actually just came out this week was the girls' night out that was scheduled has been canceled. Recently at Western Center, they did have a skills leadership, and they did it as a local event on site for their students as opposed to traveling to a national program, and that was extremely successful and well received. And I think the last thing is, and as Mrs. Zazowski had mentioned, all of the work that Andrew Rothermel has been doing. Andrew also has been supporting the Western Center by filming vignettes for each of the different programs over at Western Center, helping to put together their virtual open house programs. Students soon will be able to select 3 programs that they can view as they are evaluating and deciding whether or not they would like to enroll in or apply to the Western Center. So thank you again to Andrew. I know he's been spread really thin throughout the district, and then to step up and really help Western Center as well. That's just been awesome. So we thank you. And if I missed anything, Mr. DeBella and Mrs. Zazowski, please jump in.
No, well, the only thing that you didn't mention was that there's 2 positions that were approved that I thought I was not comfortable with the salaries of what were approved there. We're bringing in the food services person for like $92,000. I voted no on that. And then there was a special education teacher that we're bringing in for like $77,000, and I voted no on that also. I didn't get a good answer on why we're bringing, other than, oh, we're the really good people. I'm just not happy with the expenditure at that level there.
Just for a point of clarification, it's not a food services person. It's the head of the culinary department. So it's
They teach food services.
Right,
They
but
teach culinary, call it whatever you want. It's $92,000.
But it's not somebody who's it's not somebody who's serving within the school. I mean, I think it's a definite difference.
Okay, there will not be a meeting in December for the JOC, but that will resume in January. So we will again, resume with our discussions there at that time. Mr. DeBello, MCIU?
We did not have a meeting in October. We generally don't. So no report there.
Ad hoc, is there anything there? I know that there was conversations about an email to go out to the people that volunteered. Has anything developed on that?
No, because I'm really not at this point sure where to, with everything constantly changing, I'm not really sure where to go with the ad hoc at this point.
All right, any questions from anybody on any of those? And then Mr. Schaefer, do we still have you on the line there for PSBA?
Yes, I don't have a report for that this evening. So maybe 2 weeks.
Okay, we'll look for that later then. And Mr. Rizzo, Assistant Superintendent Report.
Sure, thank you. I just want to say staff are back. We know this, but they've been back in the building for a few weeks now. We are very excited to have them with us as it marks the next step towards getting our school community closer to normal. I personally want to thank the staff for all of the amazing work they have been doing since March to connect with our students. I know that there likely will be some significant barriers that they've had to undergo to get past what they need to do to get back in the building. We're thankful for what they have done. And I think it's not stated enough the amount of effort we've asked them to put in servicing 3 environments: virtual, cyber, and in person for some of our students. They put in a lot of work, and I want to thank them for that. Regardless of whether you signed up for in-person, virtual, or cyber, this Thursday does mark the beginning of the next chapter in the 2021 school year with our Q2. Q1 is almost behind us, and we are incredibly excited to see what great things Q2 and the rest of the year promises. Further, I want to thank you all the staff for working toward bringing some level of normalcy to our students in our schools. We've been very fortunate to gradually increase our offerings to our students, whether virtual or in person. As Mr. Schaefer did mention earlier, there are a lot of great things happening with our students, and we are happy to create those moments, whether it be amazing athletic accolades, awesome academic acknowledgements, or astonishing artistic adventures. Sorry, had to throw in some alliteration. All right, that's it. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Any questions or comments for Mr. Rizzo?
I would
All
just
right,
like to comment that I feel like he used much better wording in his report and should get a gold star. So it's impressive and expected. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Fitzgerald, Solicitor's Report?
I have no report this evening.
All right then. So we will move on with the agenda to the minutes. A, are there any questions or comments? Personnel, A through H, questions or comments?
I have a question again regarding C. Again, it seems like we're hiring teachers beyond the starting salary. I know the answer I'm going to get, but I don't understand when our goal was not to do this, but we seem to continue to bring in teachers at higher rates. My bigger question is C2. That salary is being funded 100% through Title I. Is that for just this year, or is that ongoing? And what happens in the future if numbers drop or whatever it may be, that we don't need that teacher for that Title I anymore? Is that something that would go away?
I'm not the Title I guru, but I do know it is based on programming needs. We get our allocation of funding every year. We did see an increase this year in Title I funding. It's my understanding, after speaking with Katie Gardy, who oversees our Title I funding, that we're looking to get around roughly the same amount next year, and then it's based on needs thereafter.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I understand that. My question is that, and maybe Mr. Fitzgerald, you could answer the question, but my question is that exactly as Ms. Lee said is what I'm referring to. It's based on Title I funding. Title I funding is based on program need. And if the program need reduces and we don't, our funding drops, are we legally bound to keep that position in the district? Or could we cut that position if Title I funding drops?
You can curtail that position. It may not be this particular individual.
Position,
it would be the position, but yes, you would curtail it under the school code. There's a process by which to address it in the scenario where Title I funding is either reduced or is modified. That's an option that would be available at that time to the district.
Okay.
Any other questions on personnel, on anything?
I just a quick question to the board. So is the board fine with us bringing in teachers at above step one as these salaries continue to grow? Is that a directive that we're comfortable with? Because if so, I'm not going to keep asking every time each month when these new hires are coming in with higher than starting salaries.
I believe there was an explanation for these in the board memo. Is that correct, Mrs. Lees? Yes. And with that.
Right, and as I stated, I don't agree with it.
I think, you know, it's a time that's very competitive to find good staff too, to find very highly qualified staff, which is what we want. I'm comfortable with it. I think that Miss Lees does an excellent job vetting, trying to find the best that she can with the qualifications and yeah, I mean, I think having teachers that come in that are already have experience is really beneficial to the other staff members and to our students. So.
My takeaway from the definition or the explanations in the board memo was that at least one of these was a little harder to fill, and that the positions or the salaries that they're at were also contingent on, I forget what the term was, that was Middlegate, Mrs. Lees, I don't think that's what it was, but there was some ordinance or law that had been passed that one of these was based on. Is that right? Because they continued to accumulate time because they continued to teach, maybe not here, but in another place, but there was some precedent that had been set before that
Correct. So
dictated where they would
you're
come.
referring to Mifflinburg. One of the
I'm sorry, I didn't
individuals
have-
being recommended is a teacher that had taught here at Springford. And as such, we did need to bring her in at the same step that she left.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
I think you can find justification for anything. I think what Mr. DeBello's position is based on is we have a policy, for lack of a better word, in place as far as what we're trying to follow. If we're going to go beyond that, the board needs to make a decision on that so we can stop having this conversation.
I'm sorry, because I've only been on the board since January.
It's not an excuse. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Just kidding.
What is the pseudo policy that we have with regards to hiring? Can I have clarification on that?
I mean,
Look, Mr. Jackson.
we only would bring in teachers beyond step one or offer step one to extremely hard positions to fill, but we've tried to stay at the starting salaries when possible. But it seems like all the positions majority of the positions we've been hiring are always coming in higher than step one. And all I'm saying is that if the philosophy of the board has changed, that's fine. But we continue bringing in these higher positions. And I agree. I mean, we want to get the best we can. I'm not disputing that, but we also have to understand that this all comes with an impact. And knowing that we're probably very close to possibly have to go into referendum next year, for our budget and our taxes, all these decisions we're making and future decisions are going to be very, and these salaries continually grow. So I need to understand if this is where the board's at and they're comfortable with it, that's okay.
I think two things are, one, I don't know that, I certainly have never seen a policy that is what we do. That may have been a practice or a preference, but I've never seen anything in writing or anything that directs administration to that. However, I think, there are a few things going on here. First and foremost is there is a significant teacher shortage. And it is very, very difficult to find a teacher, let alone a qualified teacher and somebody who can step into a position and especially, and again, a position that might be a specialized position is very, very difficult to find. So where we're concerned about, the numbers of students in virtual classes or the number of students, and the distancing of students that are going to be face-to-face, if we don't hire teachers that are available, that are qualified, that are acceptable to our standards, then we've got another teacher, we've got another class at Brook Elementary School that doesn't have a teacher. So we really do need to move with the things that we have. Second, I think as long as we are maintaining, as long as our numbers still are within the budget that has been set forth, I think that we are in good place. I think as soon as we start to kind of look that we are going to be exceeding budget, that's an area that we really need to be concerned with. And we do receive reports regularly from Mrs. Lees with the totals of where we are, in comparison to what was budgeted, if we're looking at being above or below. And those are things that individually I think we can evaluate. And then if we do need to, have an executive session regarding personnel, we can do so.
There was also a time not so long ago that I believe in executive session that we asked if you were going to hire above and beyond a step one, just to tell us why, which I think that you did in the board memo, Mrs. Lee. So I don't know that the direction of the board is to say, we're not going to look at that anymore. I think it's more to say, we asked you to explain to us if there was a reason. I think that protocol more so than policy is being followed and is happening. So I think we should continue with the format that we've been at, if most of us are okay
And
with that.
I'd have to agree with that. And the fact, I've never heard of any policy or philosophy that we want to hire everybody at step one. I mean, I don't know, coming from the business world, if you want to fill every position with someone straight out of college, you're going to have a little problem in your business operation. So I think we hire what we need to hire with the qualified people that we can get. Especially in this environment.
Well,
It's not about hiring right out of college, but again,
Yeah.
everybody's trying to convince me. All I ask is one question. If the board's okay with this, then I'm fine and let's move on. I'm good. That's all I asked. I'm good.
Okay, Linda, I'm sorry.
I wasn't trying to convince anybody. I do think that the administration has had wouldn't call it a policy, but they've always tried to find the best candidate for the price that is, going to less affect our balance sheet. And I think Mrs. Lees and Dr. Gooden have always done that, and they've been very upfront about that. I do think that if you look at that very giant spreadsheet that we get every board memo, they have been doing that to the best of their ability for as long as I've been looking at it. But again, we did ask them to present a detailed explanation of anybody who wasn't meeting that criteria that they always seem to try to meet. And I think that that's what we're reading now, which is new information. So, but I do disagree that they haven't. I think they've been working very hard at that and always have. So.
Okay, and with that, we'll move on then to finance, A through G. Questions or comments?
Could we have an explanation for one of the administrators, just for clarification for the community for G? That's a large amount of money, but it's regarding the use of our teachers in our cyber school. So I think that the community deserves an explanation.
Mr. Rizzo, do you
clarification.
want to comment on that maybe? Because I know you gave us the explanation in the board memo.
Yeah,
too.
sure. In the last two board members, I tried to update you because I didn't want you to be surprised by that. That's correct. We started this process back in May, and early projections and early enrollment. We based the initial $297,000 on 178 students enrolling in Spring-Ford Cyber. Since then, it ballooned by 263%. I wanted to hold off on coming back and asking for more because I wanted to see how Q1 rolled out. I wanted to see what families chose to do, since we did allow for some flexibility for people to come into the program and leave the program. So we didn't know what Q2 was going to look like. Now that we know what those numbers are, and right now enrollment for Q2 is at 409 students. I said 407 in the memo. It's gone up 2 since then. We're going to need some money if we want to see this through to the end of the year. And that's what this motion essentially is about. I just, again, wanting to provide information, was looking up some information on PASBO, Pennsylvania Association of School Business Officials. This year is an interesting year in that the projection is that we're going to, when I say we, I mean the Commonwealth, we'll see a $475 million increase in cyber tuitions and charter school tuitions. That's above and beyond what they already pay. Interestingly enough, Montgomery County is third in the Commonwealth in terms of increases at 23.3 million. The only 2 counties that are above them are Allegheny and Philadelphia. So we saw this coming. We wanted to bring this forward as a viable option, as a higher quality option, as an option to keep our Spring-Ford students in our district, in our school community with our teachers, and quite frankly, for 10 cents on the dollar. And we've been able to achieve that. But to continue this moving forward and to continue having this option available for our families, we're going to need to get some additional money to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Can you talk to us a little bit too about the savings that the district is projected to incur, the savings that will happen over time with having the Spring-Ford Cyber Learning Program?
Sure. So whenever I said 10 cents on the dollar, what that number actually means is if I'll use our first quarter numbers at 469 students enrolling, if all 469 students in the first quarter went to an outside cyber, we would have spent approximately for the whole year $8.6 million towards outside cybers. That's where it would have been. Now the projected cost for the whole school year is about $800,000 to $850,000, and that's the 10 cents on the dollar. So the savings comes from students that say they're going to not want to be in person or not want our virtual option to go to an outside cyber. We would be paying for them to go to that outside cyber, and instead of paying them, we're paying our own people 10 cents on the dollar to provide a higher quality program and keeping our students within our district. So that's where the savings comes in.
Are there any other questions on this from Mr. Rizzo?
So does the board understand all that? It was just curious. There was a lot of information in the Friday memo.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I understand it, and some of that's hypothetical, and that's great, but more importantly, we're going to be meeting tomorrow night at finance, and as I talked about the last meeting, we're going to be talking about all the unbudgeted line items, where we're at to date, subtract off the grants that we have received so far, and then I'll be presenting all that at the next board meeting, because again, although I'm all in favor of the cyber learning, that was our goal. The main philosophy was why we started this a couple of years ago before even COVID existed, and we expanded on it because of where we're going with. The whole idea was to keep the students here at Spring-Ford compared to making somebody extremely rich that has a cyber school. But it is an unbudgeted, no matter what, they're all on budget line items. So I'll be reporting on that next week or 2 weeks and kind of giving a layout of everything that's been unbudgeted and where we are looking at financially and the impacts that's going to have.
Okay, everyone's clear there? Any other questions or comments on that? Okay. I would just add too, if Mr. Rizzo, you could also clarify that with this cyber learning, as it continues to grow in the Springford community, that the hope is to expand that, to offer other opportunities for some of our students here, so that this really is the birth of a program that should enhance what Springford is able to offer. It does have a huge ticket price, and it's higher than anticipated. So I definitely, for one, will want to hear what Mr. DeBello has to say about the impact of that on those unbudgeted numbers, and bring that back before we would vote on that. But that's how it will be in the agenda. But can you just comment a little bit further on some of the other benefits and, you know, sell that to us a little bit? Because
Sell
it
it
is a
to
big
you.
ticket.
Well, wow, okay.
We haven't voted. There's time. Keep going.
So just very quickly, Mr. Catalano and Dr. Murray and I met a while back to talk about this as an option. And our plan, as I mentioned during one of the earlier presentations, was to bring this out for the 21-22 school year and take a year to plan. So our timeline was hastened significantly. But we see that, to Mr. DePello's point, we see this as a continuation of what we've been doing with modernizing learning, with Springford Learning. And we see this as an expansion of some of the great opportunities that our students already have, and opening up of schedules and creating a more hybridized version of what learning can look like, and really customizing student schedules to really get them fit better for college and career readiness beyond high school. It gives them an additional tool to be able to have flexibility to do internships, to take additional courses, to accelerate their learning. It creates awesome opportunities for them to continue to move forward with their learning in a much more customizable way. So we see this as the beginning of a really bright future for our students. It's a great tool that's in place. As I mentioned before, our goal in using the partnership with Seneca Valley is a 1 to 2 year partnership, because eventually we want all of our content to be on Canvas, so that whatever our students are getting brick and mortar, a similar asynchronous, albeit option, is available on Canvas to further support that seamless transition between brick and mortar, cyber, and hybrid.
Thank you.
And can I just say one more thing? I'm gonna do it. I gotta say thank you to our Springford Cyber staff, Dr. Rockland, Ms. Myers, Ms. Wobensmith, Amy Oblock, Kelly German, and all the Springford Cyber Learning staff. None of us knew how much this was going to balloon, and they have just been working countless hours to make it happen for our students, and they're rock stars. All of them, all 70 plus people that have been involved in this are rock stars. So I just gotta say thank you to all of them for their efforts.
Are you sold?
Almost. Thank you, Mr. Rizzo. Okay, moving on to other business. A, any questions or comments? Questions or comments on A under other business? These are the policies that we have been looking at in the policy committee. Okay. Seems pretty clear. Any board comment?
I have just one quick comment as a suggestion. Dr. Gooden, with the virtual class sizes that we were talking about earlier, is it possible, does it make sense, or would it be non-impactful to utilize the coaches that we have right now to have them pick up some of the virtual learning for this year as an idea?
Well, it is an idea that we vetted out, that we looked at. Quite frankly, once we get kids back in school, we are concerned about our ability to cover subs, absences for our staff. And so we are really holding our certified staff in reserve to cover those shortages that occur on a day-to-day basis. Mr. Rizzo, your finger there.
So the answer is yes, they are part of our solution. When we spent some time thinking about how to utilize them, throwing them right away into an environment where they are, I don't want to say stuck, but where they are held to that position, doesn't allow them to have the flexibility to continue to support our staff because we know that we're going to have needs all over, and we want them, they're earmarked to be used in this solution. But we didn't want to, like I said, we want to tie them down right now. We wanted to make sure we had some flexibility to support subs that are going to be in the building, to support day-to-day subs, to help support our continued growing professional development on Canvas, those types of things.
Okay, any other board comment? Great, then we'll move public to be heard. Is there anyone in person that has a comment? Okay, going over to the Zoom then, are there any comments on Zoom?
We have a couple hands raised. First up is Maggie Y. Maggie, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please. Maggie, you need to unmute, please. Next up is Brian Ewing. Brian, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Sure, Brian Ewing, 917 Mennonite Road, Royersford, Pennsylvania. You know, I wanted to speak tonight because we've been hearing a lot tonight that we're ready to bring the kids in. We have everything in place. And over the last couple of months, there's been a lot of preparation getting technology. What I haven't heard is how is a day in a class going to look for our students once they come back? You know, the goal of this is to provide the best education for our students that we can. And I don't think we really have ever touched that. I mean, you got kids that are going to be virtual, you got kids that are going to be in school, and you got teachers trying to facilitate both groups of kids. I mean, I missed you calling my name earlier because I'm trying to listen to a Zoom meeting and talk to my wife at the same time. I couldn't do it. I don't know how the teachers are going to be able to facilitate talking or providing their full attention to the kids on virtual and the kids in the class. I do know that the secondary from 7th and 8th were asked to not direct teach for more than 20 to 25 minutes and spend the remainder of the class addressing the kids online, prepping for the next class, and that includes cleaning and charging their iPads. So at some point in time, one of these groups is going to be ignored. So we're losing valuable education time for all of our students, one way or the other. Whether we're ready and we have all the stuff in place or not, the purpose of this is to provide the best education for our students. And right now we can't do that. One of the other things that I haven't heard is when you do bring these students back, and you talked about it, that they haven't been able to show that there's any spread within schools. That's because nobody's in school right now. And once they do come back, what is the protocol? How are you going to notify other students or teachers if there is a possible case in their class to help stop the spread? Is it going to be an immediate notification to the family that, hey, your student may possibly have been exposed to someone who may possibly have the COVID? Are you going to let the teachers know? How is that going to happen? Because to me, if that's the case in my company, all my team members have to take a survey every single day before they can walk into the building. And if they have a sniffle, hangnail, eyelash coming out of place or whatever, they can't come into the building. They have to stay home. If they're exposed to anybody that may have possibly have those symptoms at home or anywhere else, they can't come in. Everybody is erring on the side of caution because we all want to get back to normal. The biggest thing that I want is for us to provide the best possible education for every student, whether they choose to do it from home or whether they choose to do it in school. But the way things are right now, you're not going to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you. We've hit 3 minutes.
Next up is Scott Hoffman. Scott, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Yes, it's Scott Hoffman, 14 Hawkeye Drive in Royersford. Just a quick question. I apologize if I missed it earlier, but it's obviously it's very clear that there was a metric set that would trigger going back to virtual. The metric was hit, but now the metric is moving. So my question is, what is the new metric? What is it? Is it 2 weeks of this elevated status? Is there some other component, or is it completely at this point going to be sort of a subjective decision?
Next up is Annie. Annie, first and last name, your full address, and your public comment, please.
Annie Schlichter, 311 Walnut Street in Spring City. First, I'd like to start by saying, I understand that this is problematic for everybody at this point. With the email sent out today, how can you reopen? You don't have enough classes. The cleaning's not in place yet. There's issues that are not worked out. You don't have enough subs to accommodate the kids for in-person or virtual, and you reopen this week. You had plans in place that are now not what was planned. What about the kids who don't wear masks in school? In the beginning of all of this, you had stated that there were going to be kids that were problematic and not going to follow guidelines within the school and not going to follow proper procedures. How are you going to address that? You say that it spreads within family. I get it. It spreads from one person to another. It could be just somebody walking by without a mask within 5 feet. What, family gatherings, and then you have the kids come in school and then you have the kids take off their masks because they have to blow their nose or whatever it may be. It's still going to be spreading that way. It's not in schools because we haven't been in school. So with Dr. Gooden mentioning in the beginning, he was totally against opening in green or yellow, opened in red. He was very adamant about it, but now it seems to be a laughing matter that it's totally okay to open now. With sending out this email today, parents should be able to make that switch. As is will accommodate what you can. So, again, you are opening up a situation that will cause a lot of controversy. I understand parents are angry. I am one of those parents. And I normally comment at every meeting. Very disappointed, very upset for the fact that you aren't allowing parents to change, being as though that they're going back hybrid on Thursday and you send out this email yesterday. So we're processing all of this information now. I think it's a terrible choice to reopen. Again, as is, will accommodate what you guys can't, because there's still a lot of things that are not in place for where we need them to be in place. That is all. Thank you.
Next up is Gabrielle Deerdorf. Gabrielle, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Abby Deerdorf, 704 Collin Court in Royersford. I wanted to give a special shout out to the district nurses. I'm a substitute nurse for the district through an agency, and I just wanted everyone out there to know how impressed I am with the preparedness of the school nurses, the evidence-based practice that they've used to put into place extremely effective procedures. The nurses are ready. The substitute nurses are ready. Excellent mitigation policies are ready to be put in place. But I'm disheartened that, again, they have not been included in this conversation. I think in the past 6 months, we heard from a school nurse once. There's a credibility factor there. Per Dr. Gooden's email and conversation tonight, he had a phone call with the county that said this is how it's changing. I don't see any new guidance on the county's website. I don't see any new guidance on PDE's website. I don't see any new guidance from the CHOP Policy Lab. Just this off conversation, I asked in the beginning of the meeting to clarify how you had to have a plan approved and submitted, and now suddenly we're just going to change it. To echo Mr. Ewing's statement, there are very efficient contact tracing policies and procedures already in place, but you wouldn't know that because the school nurses haven't been given a voice to tell you all of the great things that they have done to become prepared for this. And then also, off of what Mr. Hoffman just said, what is the metric? So if you're just going to do whatever you want now and not follow any of the guidance that we've all been tracking, what is the metric? What can we look for to know that we're, again, getting our kids the most quality education and high Spring-Ford standards, and yet have it be safe? It's just really disheartening to know you're just going to plow through with a blatant disregard for the science and what's actually going on. You're in moderate right now because you didn't factor in the weekend. When you look at the stats that have jumped from November 6th to today, November 9th, it's going to be substantial, and it's going to be substantial tomorrow. You talk about the emotional well-being of these kids. You're forcing them into a major transition on Thursday with new teachers. For what? The initial guidance from PDE that you provided was to wait 2 weeks before making a change. So why not wait 1 more week and see where we are next week? That's all that I have to say. And I also just wanted to say how taken aback I was by Mr. Jackson's incredibly rude comment to Dr. Wright just now. You back it up like it's a joke, but it wasn't funny to any of us. Thanks.
Next up is Erica Hermans. Erica, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Hi, Erica Hermans, 204 Abbey Drive in Royersford. My comment tonight is not in favor of or in opposition of any particular side. I think I, like many other families, came to peace with the direction the board is heading in terms of providing a 5-day live instruction option in a pandemic. But since September, I can cite a handful of different instances where the board or the administration has flipped or has tried to flip its position. And I want to provide some clarity on exactly why some parents are feeling confused and frustrated. Some instances are, for example, number one, pushing survey dates up from the end of September to early September. And then the survey was binding and then it wasn't. And then there was another survey that was binding. Secondly, classes K through 6 would have a max of 24 kids. Even tonight, Dr. Gooden, you stated looking at the numbers, we are well below 24. Dr. Gooden accepted Evans. No, it's statements like this that create mistrust. You have classrooms of 24 and 25 kids at Evans. So I'm asking, is it a cap? Is it an average? What is it? It was stated that K through 4 could achieve 5 to 6 foot distancing between desks. And then it was later clarified that this was when measuring from the middle of the desk. No one measures like that. It's negligent to even communicate information in this fashion. This example for me particularly felt like an attempt to deceive with the truth. And I can keep going on. The board agreed to reopen on November 12th. And on September 28th, there were some board members that wanted to try to get the elementary kids in as early as October 5th. And now instead of looking at transmission at the county level, we're looking at the township level. I live in Limerick Township on the border of Burris Ridge Borough. I can tell you COVID spread is not isolated to townships. And so these examples for me go beyond us being in a fluid situation. It's leaning towards poor communication. And at this point, the question for parents is not whether it's virtual or in person. We've all made our decisions. The question is, how will you as a school board and an administration instill the level of transparency and trust needed for parents to make these crucial decisions with confidence moving forward? Because we know there will be more decisions to be made. And you are continuing to discredit yourselves in the eyes of this community when you are unable to provide some small degree of consistent messaging in a time of crisis. Your words need to be backed with actions that demonstrate your ability to effectively lead. So please speak with care and good faith moving forward. Thank you.
Next up is Kate Palladino. Kate, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Yes, Kate Palladino, 311 Cambridge Drive, Royersford, Pennsylvania. To Dr. Gooden and the school board members, you have a school board approved and published plan that clearly states, and I quote, if the county moves to substantial, all teachers and families will be notified the Spring-Ford Area School District will move to virtual learning. You are now changing this plan without any notification or warning to the families or even teachers from what I clearly understand. They found out today as well. You have made a significant change to a published and board approved plan without a motion or vote. Is that even permissible? If things were changing weekly, the public and all industry interested parties, especially teachers and parents, should have been kept apprised of that. There was no warning. You had ample opportunity. You could have provided a daily update for full transparency. The county may have only moved into substantial this week, but obviously the admin has been having discussions with the county and other districts, which indicates you knew there was consideration to change the plan. This should have been communicated to all shareholders. In addition, now that the district has gone against their published plan, I am certain there will be families who will want to change their intention for their children. They will want to remove their children from in-class learning and remain virtual. Without question, this should be permitted. You cannot say, and I quote, you can't make a promise that you can accommodate a change to virtual. You must accommodate it. Your solicitor also mentioned it wasn't a contract or specifically a binding contract. You cannot limit changes. You cannot tell a parent they cannot keep their children home safely. You have changed the rules. You have negated your published plan. This is truly disappointing. You must take the time to rethink this new plan and possibly send yet another survey, hopefully comprehensive this time. Your numbers of virtual versus in-school, especially for elementary, could change significantly, which could change class sizes and identify needs in one versus the other. I will close in saying that this decision was absolutely not transparent. No matter how many of the board members or admins say there was transparency, it does not make it true. I know you have lost confidence of many in our community. Thank you.
Next up is Jerry. Jerry, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Hello, this is Jerry Denaris, and I live at 3 Buckley Circle, Royersford. I wanted to comment on the email that Dr. Gooden sent out earlier today. He listed some statistics for incident rate released by Montgomery County. And for those that don't know what that means, the incident rate is the total number of new infections in a 7-day period per 100,000 people in that area. And this is one of the metrics cited by the PA Department of Education for determining instruction models during COVID. However, as Dr. Gooden stated today, the numbers in his email for incidence rate are over 10 days old because the county has not yet posted those specific numbers on their website. But they have posted up through today the raw numbers of new infections each day in each municipality. So I'm an engineer. I deal with numbers all day. The math isn't really that hard. And I've taken it upon myself to calculate the incidence rate as of today. I think everyone on the board, at the meeting, listening at home, who received that email should know what the latest numbers are. And I will gladly email these calculations to you, Dr. Gooden, and to the board after the meeting for your reference. And again, with these numbers, note that per the PA Department of Education, an incidence rate over 100 is considered substantial, and they recommend a full virtual learning model. For Royersford, it was 20.9 on October 29th. As of today, it's 104.8 and has been over 100 for the last 4 days. In Limerick Township, it was 79.5 on October 29th. It's now 158.9 and has been over 100 for the last 10 days. In Upper Providence, it was 84.8 on October 29th, and it's now 114.5. It's been over 100 for 11 days. In Montgomery County overall, it was 73.2 on October 29th, and it was 106 as of last Friday, as he stated in his email. And as of today, it's now 126.5. It's been over 100 for 4 days. I do not have anything for Spring City, as that's from Chester County, and their website did not have that information. So I understand that a lot more goes into these decisions than looking at this one number, and it's an oversimplification to just look at one thing. But if you're going to look at the numbers, you got to look at the most up-to-date, correct numbers that are available in order to make an informed decision. Don't look at numbers from 2 weeks ago because they are changing daily. Thank you.
Next up is Sarah. Sarah, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please. Sarah, there you go.
Hi, this is Sarah Denoris at 3 Buckley Circle in Royersford. I've always had my concerns about the plans that were laid out on September 8th, but I was reassured by the fact that at the very least, the plan provided a safety net to stop the reopening if the numbers continued to rise. Over the past 3 weeks, we've seen a continuous rise in cases. The numbers we look at today are 1 to 2 weeks old, according to Montgomery County's dashboard, and thankfully my husband just clarified that all for everybody. Yes, there are parents who want their kids back in school no matter what, but this isn't just about choice for parents. How will the current plan adjust to accommodate the teachers who now find the new plan unacceptable? We continue to see resignations on every agenda, more than there were at this time in 2008 or in 2009. I'm sorry, 2018 or 2019. The teachers are willing to take on a lot of stress and hard work to provide our students with an education, even though times are tough. Please don't take it for granted that they'll continue to take on more and more risk. Dr. Gooden, you stated earlier tonight that staffing is an issue. If at this moment there is no long-term sub to teach a virtual class, how can you cover any further resignations or leave of absences? How can you provide the in-person teachers with a substitute support to take the sick days and follow all the protocols in the event that they don't feel well? I understand that the situation has been and will continue to be fluid. I understand that the plans will change, but please consider that the survey responses and commitments were predicated on the specific information that was provided at the time. Changing something as vital as the final fail-safe 3 days before schools reopen is problematic. Even though this guidance is new and comes from the PDE, it would have been prudent to present this new information to parents in a collaborative way. Notify the parents of the new guidelines and approach us with understanding that these changes may cause some families and teachers to change their choice of modality. I hope that as things continue to evolve, that you'll again bring in a representative from the Montgomery County Department of Health and a representative from our nursing department at Springford to keep the board of directors and the community informed. I think that the current reopening as it stands is misguided, and I think you'll only be facing closure within a matter of weeks.
Next up is Carol Spears. Carol, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Carol Spears, 106 North Reber Road, Collegeville, Pennsylvania. Dr. Gooden, I wanted to thank you tonight for the information you shared from your conversations and collaboration with the county regarding new metrics in regards to reopening our schools. With the plan in place to reopen schools in 2 days, I think the reconsideration for returning to virtual is difficult, especially for single parents, working parents, essential workers, people that have been planning their work schedules around their children returning to in-person schools. The fact that parents who may be reconsidering their decisions about returning their kids to school still have the option to remain virtual. So I urge you to please consider remaining on the path that Springford has laid out, especially regarding the new information that we have from the county related to community transmission in the schools as opposed to in the community at large. Thank you.
Next up is Heather Staley. Heather, first and last name, full address, and your public comment, please.
Hi, this is Heather Staley, 412 New Street. First off, I want to thank Dr. Godin for all the information that he provided with us and the fact that he is trying to do the best that he can do with a very fluid situation. As you all know, I've told you that I do designated infection control officer stuff. Things change daily. However, one thing everyone needs to keep in their minds is that when they say cases equal a positive test. We've had lots and lots of information that we've given to other people in other meetings about tests not being 100% accurate. So when we're looking at cases, they're not cases of people who are sick. Yes, there are some more cases that have come up, and it will happen in the fall as the flu does. However, the fact that he's telling you that other schools such as Souderton and other people who have been doing this for a while have had 0 transmissions from kids should make you feel more comfortable that they are using the mitigating tactics that have been set out. And the fact that the Department of Education in Pennsylvania is looking at changing their guidelines, and the fact that they've spoken with Montgomery County Health is also should be a comfort to everyone. I wanted to take the time and say thank you. My daughter is a happier person, looking forward to going back to school on Thursday. And again, as the other person just before me spoke, if you're that concerned, they said they will try to accommodate everybody's wishes to the best of their ability. I thank you guys so much for all your effort.
There are no more hands raised at this time.
Okay, then with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Good night, everyone.